passed out. I don't know. We're trying to find some life. A few males and females have been shot. Upon that, there's like 500 people.
All right, let's dive into a case that's fascinated people for decades. The Boy in the Box. It all goes back to 1957 in Philadelphia.
Yeah, bustling city, you know.
Right, and in the middle of it all, this pretty eerie discovery.
Yeah.
Imagine walking through the woods, not expecting anything unusual.
And you come across just a discarded cardboard box.
Exactly.
But inside, not old junk or anything like that, but a young boy's body, probably about 4 to 6 years old, just left there, no name, no one claiming him.
It's so chilling, right? That a young life could end that way, and we still don't know who he was. And what gets me is, it wasn't some hidden away place. This happened in a neighborhood.
Yeah, it makes it even more disturbing. This wasn't tucked away. It was almost like they wanted him found but not identified. And to add to that, there were signs of abuse, bruises, he looked malnourished, his hair was cut really short, almost like they tried to get rid of any way to tell who he was.
So the police were dealing with a possible homicide, a young child, and absolutely no idea who he was. What did they do first to try and figure this out?
Well, think about police work back then. No DNA databases, none of the fancy forensics we have now. It was all very hands-on, you know. They went all over the neighborhood, knocking on doors, talking to hundreds of people, hoping someone would recognize him. They put up flyers with a sketch of him, thinking maybe someone, somewhere, would know him as a missing child.
Those sketches are haunting, like a frozen moment in time. Did any of that lead anywhere?
Sadly, no. No one came forward. No missing person reports matched. It was like he just appeared, died tragically, and vanished again.
Like a puzzle with so many missing pieces. What were some of the theories that came up back then?
One idea was maybe he was adopted and then abandoned. Maybe a family couldn't handle caring for him. Some thought it could be tied to illegal adoptions, or that he fell through the cracks in the foster care system.
Heartbreaking, especially since we don't even know his name, his story. Did the police ever focus on specific suspects?
There were some leads over the years. One that really caught the public's attention was a woman called Martha, worked as a housekeeper, and she claimed to know about the boy, even said she saw him being abused.
That sounds like a big break. Did her story help them get closer to the truth?
It didn't, unfortunately. Her story kept changing, and even after years, nothing solid came from it. It was a dead end. Happens a lot with cold cases. These little sparks of hope that just fade away.
So even with those leads, the investigation kept hitting walls. Did advancements in technology, like DNA testing, offer any new ways to solve the case?
You're right, and that brings us to a big shift in the investigation many years after the boy was found. In 2022, the Vidocq Society got involved. They're a group of retired forensic experts known for tackling really difficult cold cases.
I've heard of them, like real-life Sherlock Holmes, using all their experience to crack cases no one else could. What new approaches did they bring?
Well, the Vidocq Society, they used this cutting-edge DNA technology, which obviously wasn't around back in '57. They took DNA from the boy's remains and used this technique called genetic genealogy to trace his ancestry, hoping to find some relatives or at least a general area where he might be from.
So after all those years, science could actually offer new clues in a case that seemed impossible to solve. Did this DNA analysis actually lead to any breakthroughs?
It did. By carefully analyzing and comparing with genetic databases, they were able to narrow down a possible region where he might have been from, the Delaware Valley. This was huge because it suggested that he wasn't necessarily from Philadelphia itself.
So instead of just searching in Philadelphia, investigators now had a bigger area to look at. Did this new information lead them to any potential relatives or missing person reports matching the boy's DNA?
Sadly, no direct matches, but the investigation didn't end there. The Vidocq Society also used this technique called isotopic analysis. It looks at the chemical makeup of someone's remains, which can tell you things about their diet and even the places they lived.
Wait, so even after all this time, scientists could figure out where this boy might have been living before Philadelphia? That's incredible. What did this isotopic analysis show?
Think of it this way. You are what you eat, right? And the food you eat, well, it leaves a kind of chemical signature in your bones and teeth. By studying those, scientists can trace where a person has been and what they ate over time. In the boy's case, the analysis suggested he'd lived in a few different places. Might have even moved around quite a bit in the months before he died.
So maybe he wasn't even from the Delaware Valley originally, but just ended up there somehow. That adds another layer of mystery to an already confusing case. Did these scientific findings revive any old theories or lead to new avenues of investigation?
Absolutely. It gave investigators valuable new information that they could use to look at old leads and explore new angles. For example, the isotopic analysis could help determine if any potential suspects had lived in or traveled to the same places as the boy.
It's like putting together a puzzle, with every new piece filling in a little more of the picture. But even with all these advances, we're still left with so many unanswered questions. What happened to this boy in the months, maybe even years, before his death? Was he neglected, abused? Was he taken from somewhere else entirely?
Those are the questions that still haunt investigators and anyone who's followed this case. The lack of a clear story, a complete picture, is maybe what makes the boy in the box case so enduring and so tragic. We have the beginning, that chilling discovery etched in our memories, and we have the end, a life cut short in a way we can't understand. But the in-between, his life, what he went through, who he knew, it's all still a mystery.
It's a reminder that for every unsolved case, behind every nameless victim, there's a human story waiting to be told, a life that mattered, and a loss that continues to echo through time. And talking about stories, what strikes me is how the image of the boy in the box, that sketch, has become so ingrained in our minds. It's like he represents not just his own case, but all the children who suffer silently, their stories untold.
You've touched on something really important about why this case is still so powerful. That image of the little boy, his innocent face in those sketches, it's become a symbol of lost and vulnerable children everywhere. It speaks to our deepest fears, a worry we have as a society about keeping our most vulnerable safe. We see his face and it reminds us how fragile childhood is, how darkness can be hiding even in the most normal places.
It's almost like we've adopted him collectively. We feel this need to keep his memory alive, never forget what happened, and hope that one day his story will be fully revealed. But aside from the mystery, there's a real emotional impact this case has had on people, both those involved in the investigation and the public. I'm curious, from your perspective, how has the boy in the box case shaped how we view child vulnerability, and what lessons can we learn from it, even after all this time?
I think it's clear the boy in the box case really made us face some hard truth about how well we protect our most vulnerable. It wasn't just that one investigation that went wrong, but a whole system that failed to notice, protect, care for a child who clearly needed help.
It makes you think, how many other children are out there just slipping through the cracks? How many stories are we not hearing? How many families are living with that horrible not knowing, wondering what happened to their loved ones? This one case, as awful as it is, makes us look at a much bigger problem.
Right. And we tend to focus on solving the mystery, finding whoever did it. But there's also this need to address the things in society that allowed this to happen in the first place. In a way, the boy in the box case started conversations about child welfare, about needing stronger safety nets, more aware communities, systems that don't fail those who need them most.
It reminds us every child deserves to have their voice heard, to be seen, to be safe.
Yeah.
And that even now, so many years later, it's our responsibility to learn from this, to push for change, and to keep this boy's memory alive, even though we don't know his name.
There's this powerful saying that comes up a lot. We may not know your name, but we will never forget you. It shows how much we care, how we refuse to let this boy and others like him just be forgotten. The fact that people are still working to identify him, to solve his case, proves that.
It shows the power of hope, that even in the darkest times, truth and justice can win out, even if it takes a long time. And it reminds us we all had to do our part to protect children, to speak up if something's wrong, to be aware in our communities. We might never know all the answers in the boy in the box case, but we can choose to learn from it, to make sure his story helps bring about positive change.
I like that. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. The boy in the box might always be a mystery. His story might never be finished. But he leaves behind a legacy and all the work being done to protect children, to make communities stronger, to make sure no child ever goes through such a lonely, tragic experience again.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the unknown.